Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, Ph.D. Chapter 4. The New Physics, Planting Both Feet Firmly on Thin Air. When I was an ambitious undergraduate biology major in the 1960s, I knew that to have a prayer of getting into a prestigious graduate school, I needed to take a physics course. My college offered a basic introductory course, something like Physics 101, which covered fundamental topics like gravity, electromagnetism, acoustics, pulleys, and inclined planes in a way that was easily understood by non-physics majors. There was also another course called quantum physics, but almost all of my peers avoided it like the plague. Quantum physics was shrouded in mystery. We biology majors were convinced that it was a very, very weird science. We thought only physics majors, masochists, and outright fools would risk 5 credits on a course whose premise was, now you see it, now you don't. In those days, the only reason I would have been able to come up with for taking a quantum physics course was that it would have served as a great pickup line at parties. In the days of Sonny and Cher, it would have been très chic to say, hey babe, I'm into quantum physics. What sign are you? On the other hand, even that might not be true. I never saw quantum physicists at parties or, in fact, anywhere else. I don't think they got out much. So I reviewed my transcripts, weighed the options, and took the easy way out by selecting Physics 101. I was intent on becoming a biologist. I had no interest in having my career aspirations depend on some slide rule slinging physicist singing the praises of ephemeral bosons and quarks. I, and virtually every other biology major, either paid little attention to or completely ignored quantum physics as we pursued our studies in the life sciences. Unsurprisingly, given our attitude, we biology majors didn't know much about physics, the one with all the equations and mathematics. I knew about gravity. Heavy things tend to end up at the bottom and lighter things on top. I knew something about light, plant pigments such as chlorophyll, and animal visual pigments such as rhodopsin and in the retina absorb some colors of light and are blind to others. I even knew a little about temperature. High temperatures inactive biological molecules by causing them to melt, and low temperatures freeze and preserve molecules. I'm obviously exaggerating to stress the point that biologists traditionally don't know much physics. My quantum physics deprived background explains why, even when I rejected nucleus-based biology and turned to the membrane, I still didn't understand the full implications of that shift. I knew that integral membrane proteins hook up with environmental signals to power the cell. But because I didn't know anything about the quantum universe, I did not fully appreciate the nature of the environmental signals that start the process. It wasn't until 1982, more than a decade after I had finished graduate school, that I finally learned how much I had missed when I skipped quantum physics in college. I believe that had I been introduced to quantum world in college, I would have turned into a biology renegade much earlier. But on the day in 1982, I was sitting on the floor of a warehouse in Berkeley, California, 1,500 miles from home, lamenting the fact that I had seriously compromised my scientific career on a failed attempt to produce a rock and roll show. The crew and I were stranded. We had run out of money after 6 shows. I had no cash, and whenever I offered my credit card, the merchant's credit approval machine displayed a skull and crossbones. We were living on coffee and donuts while we proceeded through Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grieving over the death of our show: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. But at that moment of acceptance, the silence in the darkened concrete tomb of a warehouse was broken by the piercing electronic screech of a phone. Despite the phone's incessant, obnoxious signal, the crew and I ignored the caller. It wasn't for us. No one knew we were here. Finally, the manager of the warehouse retrieved the call and restored the blessed silence. In the quiet, still air, I heard the manager respond, "Yes, he's here." I looked up at that moment from the darkest depth of my life and saw the phone being extended towards me. It was the Caribbean-based medical school that had hired me 2 years earlier. The president of the school had spent 2 days tracking my erratic tail from Wisconsin to California so he could ask me if I would be interested in teaching anatomy again. Would I be interested? Does a bear relieve himself in the woods? How soon do you want me? Was my reply. He said, "Yesterday." I told him I would love the job but needed an advance on my salary. The school wired the money that same day, and I split the proceeds with my crew. I then flew back to Madison to prepare for an extended stay in the tropics. I bid farewell to my daughters and hastily packed my clothes and a few household items. Within 24 hours, I was back at O'Hare Airport waiting for Pan Am's clipper ship to the Garden of Eden. By now, you're no doubt wondering what my failed rock and roll career has to do with quantum physics. Welcome to my unorthodox lecture style. For the linear-minded, we're officially back to quantum physics, through which I was delighted to learn that scientists cannot understand the mysteries of the universe using only linear thinking. Listening to the inner voice. While I was waiting for the flight, I realized suddenly that I had nothing to read while strapped into a seat for 5 hours. Moments before the gate was to close, I left the line and ran down the concourse to a bookstore. The task of selecting one book out of hundreds of choices, while simultaneously envisioning the possibility that my plane's doors would close and leave me behind, almost paralyzed me. In a state of confusion, one book jumped out at me, The Cosmic Code, Quantum Physics as the Language of Nature, by physicist Heinz R. Pagels. I quickly scanned the jacket and found that it was a quantum physics text written for the lay audience. Stubbornly adhering to the quantum physics phobia I had displayed since college, I immediately put the book down and began to search for something lighter. As the second hand on my mental stopwatch entered into the red zone, I picked up a self-proclaimed bestseller and ran to the cashier. While the clerk was preparing to ring up the bestseller, I looked up and saw another copy of Pagels' book on the shelf behind the clerk. Midway through the checkout process, with time running out, I finally broke through my aversion to quantum physics and asked the clerk to add a copy of The Cosmic Code. After I boarded the plane, I calmed down from my adrenalized trip to the bookstore, worked on a crossword puzzle, and then finally settled down to read Pagels' book. I found myself burning through its pages, even though I had to continually back up and read sections over again and again. I read through the flight, the 3-hour layover in Miami, and an additional 5 hours en route to my island paradise. Pagels was completely blowing me away. Before boarding the plane in Chicago, I had no idea that quantum physics was in any way relevant to biology, the science of living organisms. When the plane arrived in paradise, I was in a state of intellectual shock. I realized that quantum physics is relevant to biology, and that biologists are committing a glaring scientific error by ignoring its laws. Physics, after all, is the foundation for all of the sciences. Yet we biologists rely on the outmoded, albeit tidier, Newtonian version of how the world works. We stick to the physical world of Newton and ignore the invisible quantum world of Einstein, in which matter is actually made up of energy and there are no absolutes. At the atomic level, matter does not even exist with certainty. It only exists as a tendency to exist. All my certitudes about biology and physics were shattered. In retrospect, it should have been obvious to me and to other biologists that Newtonian physics, as elegant and reassuring as it is to hyper-rational scientists, cannot offer the whole truth about the human body, let alone the universe. Medical science keeps advancing, but living organisms stubbornly refuse to be quantified. Discovery after discovery about the mechanics of chemical signals, including hormones, cytokines, or hormones that control the immune system, growth factors, and tumor suppressors, cannot explain paranormal phenomena, spontaneous healings, psychic phenomena, amazing feats of strength and endurance. the ability to walk across hot coals without getting burned, acupuncture's ability to diminish pain by moving qi around the body, and many other paranormal phenomena defy Newtonian biology. Of course, I considered none of that when I was on medical school faculties. My colleagues and I trained our students to disregard the healing claims attributed to acupuncture, chiropractic, massage therapy, prayer, etc. In fact, we went further. We denounced these practices as the rhetoric of charlatans because we were tethered to a belief of old-style Newtonian physics. The healing modalities I just mentioned are all based on the belief that energy fields are influential in controlling our physiology and our health. The illusion of matter. Once I finally grappled with quantum physics, I realized that when we so cavalierly dismissed those energy-based practices, we were acting as myopically as the chairman of the physics department at Harvard University, who, as described in The Dancing Wu Li Masters by Gary Zukov, warned students in 1893 that there was no need for new Ph.D.s in physics. He boasted that science had established that the universe is a matter machine made up of physical, individual atoms that fully obey the laws of Newtonian mechanics. For physicists, the only work left was to refine its measurements. 3 short years later, the notion that the atom was the smallest particle in the universe fell by the wayside, with the discovery that the atom itself is made up of even smaller subatomic elements. Even more earth-shattering than the discovery of those subatomic particles was the revelation that atoms emit various strange energies, such as X-rays and radioactivity. At the turn of the 20th century, a new breed of physicists evolved whose mission was to probe the relationship between energy and the structure of matter. Within another 10 years, physicists abandoned their belief in a Newtonian material universe because they had come to realize that the universe is not made of matter suspended in empty space, but energy. Quantum physicists discovered that physical atoms are made up of vortices of energy that are constantly spinning and vibrating. Each atom is like a wobbly spinning top that radiates energy because each atom has its own specific energy signature, or wobble. Assemblies of atoms, or molecules, collectively radiate their own identifying energy patterns. So every material structure in the universe, including you and me, radiates a unique energy signature. If it were theoretically possible to observe the composition of an actual atom with a microscope, what would we see? Imagine a swirly dust devil cutting across the desert's floor. Now remove the sand and dirt from the funnel cloud. What you have left is an invisible, tornado-like vortex, a number of infinitely small, dust devil-like energy vortices called quarks, and photon collectively made up of the structure of the atom. Far away, the atom would likely appear as a blurry sphere. As its structure came nearer to focus, the atom would become less clear and less distinct. As the surface of the atom drew near, it would disappear. You would see nothing. In fact, as you focus through the entire structure of the atom, all you would observe is a physical void. The atom has no physical structure. The emperor has no clothes. Remember the atomic models you studied in school? The ones with marbles and ball bearings going around like the solar system? Let's put that picture beside the physical structure of the atom discovered by quantum physics. See this picture? No, there has not been a printing mistake. Atoms are made out of invisible energy, not tangible matter. So, in our world, material substance or matter appears out of thin air. Kind of weird when you think about it. Here you are holding this physics book in your hand. Yet, if you were to focus on the book's material substance with an atomic microscope, you would see that you're holding nothing. As it turns out, we undergraduate biology majors were right about one thing. The quantum universe is mind-bending. let's look more closely at the now you see it, now you don't nature of quantum physics. Matter can simultaneously be defined as a solid or a particle and as an immaterial force field or a wave. When scientists study the physical properties of atoms, such as mass and weight, they look and act like physical matter. However, when the same atoms are described in terms of voltage potentials and wavelengths, they exhibit the qualities and properties of energy or waves. The fact that energy and matter are one and the same in precisely what Einstein recognized when he concluded that E equals mc squared. Simply stated, this equation reveals that energy, or E, equals matter multiplied by the speed of light, c squared. Einstein revealed that we do not live in a universe with discrete physical objects separated by dead space. The universe is one indivisible, dynamic whole, in which energy and matter are so deeply entangled, it is impossible to consider them as independent elements. They are not side effects, they are effects. The awareness that such profoundly different mechanics control the structure and behavior of matter should have offered biomedicine new insights into understanding health and disease. Yet, even after the discoveries of quantum physics, biologists and medical students continue to be trained to view the body only as a physical machine that operates in accordance with Newtonian principles. In seeking knowledge of how the body's mechanisms are controlled, researchers have focused their attention on investigating on a large variety of physical signals, classified into discrete chemical families, including aforementioned hormones, cytokines, growth factors, tumor suppressors, messengers, and ions. However, because of their Newtonian materialistic bias, conventional researchers have completely ignored the role that energy plays in health and disease. In addition, conventional biologists are reductionists who believe that mechanisms of our physical bodies can be understood by taking the cells apart and studying their chemical building blocks. They believe that the biomedical reactions responsible for life are generated through Henry Ford-style assembly lines. One chemical causes a reaction, followed by another reaction with a different chemical, etc. The linear flow of information from A to B to C to D to E is illustrated on the following pages. Picture. This reductionist model suggests that if there is a problem in the system, evident as a disease or dysfunction, the source of the problem can be attributed to a malfunction in one of the steps along the chemical assembly line. By providing the cell with a functional replacement part for the faulty element by prescribing pharmaceutical drugs, for example, the defective single point can theoretically be repaired and health restored. This assumption spurs the pharmaceutical industry's search for magic bullet drugs and designer genes. However, the quantum perspective reveals that the universe is an integration of interdependent energy fields that are entangled in a meshwork of interactions. Biomedical scientists have been particularly confounded because they do not recognize the massive complexity of the intercommunication among the physical parts and the energy fields that make up the whole. The reductionist's perception of a linear flow of information is a characteristic of the Newtonian universe. In contrast, the flow of information in a quantum universe is holistic. Cellular constituents are woven into a complex web of crosstalk, feedback, and feed-forward communication loops. See the same illustration. A biological dysfunction may arise from a miscommunication along any of the routes of information flow. To adjust the chemistry of this complicated interactive system requires a lot more understanding than just adjusting one of the information pathway's components with a drug. If you change the concentration of C, for example, it doesn't just influence the action of D. Via holistic pathways, variations of the concentration of C profoundly influence the behaviors and functions of A, B, and E, as well as D. Once I realized the nature of the complex interactions between matter and energy, I knew that the reductionistic linear A is greater than B, which is greater than C, which is greater than D, and therefore greater than E approach could not even come close to giving us an accurate understanding of disease. While quantum physics implied the existence of such interconnected information pathways, recent groundbreaking research in mapping protein-protein interactions in the cell now demonstrates the physical presence of these complex holistic pathways. The illustration on page 74 shows the interactions among a few of the proteins in a fruit fly cell. Connecting lines represent protein-protein interactions. Here's such a picture. Very complex. Clearly, biological dysfunctions can result from miscommunications anywhere within these complex pathways. When you change the parameters of a protein at one point in such a complex pathway, you inevitably alter the parameters of other proteins at innumerable points within the entangled networks. In addition, take a look at the 7 circles in the next illustration that group proteins according to their physiological functions. Notice that proteins within one function group, such as those concerned with sex determination, see the arrow, also influence proteins with a completely different function, like RNA synthesis. Newtonian research scientists have not fully appreciated the extensive interconnectivity among the cell's biological information networks. Okay, I'm going to read the description of this photo. This map of interactions among a very small set of cellular proteins, shaded and numbered circles, found in a fruit fly cell. Most of the proteins are associated with the synthesis and metabolism of RNA molecules. Proteins enclosed within ovals are grouped according to specific pathway functions. Connecting lines indicate protein-protein interactions. Protein interconnections among the different pathways reveal how interfering with one protein may produce profound side effects upon other related pathways. More widespread side effects may be generated when a common protein is utilized in completely different functions. For example, the same RBP1 protein, denoted by the arrow, is used in RNA metabolism as well as in pathways associated with sex determination. This is reprinted with permission from Science. The mapping of these information network pathways underscores the dangers of prescription drugs. We can now see why pharmaceutical drugs come with information sheets listing voluminous side effects that range from irritating to deadly. When a drug is introduced into the body to treat a malfunction in one protein, that drug inevitably interacts with at least one and possibly many other proteins. Complicating the drug side effect issue is also the fact that biological systems are redundant. The same signals or protein molecules may be simultaneously used in different organs and tissues where they provide for completely different behavioral functions. For example, when a drug is prescribed to correct a dysfunction in a signaling pathway of the heart, that drug is delivered by the blood to the entire body. This cardiac medicine can unintentionally disturb the function of the nervous system if the brain also uses components of the targeting signaling pathway. While this redundancy complicates the effects of prescription drugs, it is another remarkably efficient result of evolution. Multicellular organisms can survive with far fewer genes than scientists once thought because the same gene products or proteins are used for a variety of functions. This is similar to using the 26 letters of the alphabet to construct every word in our language. In my research on human blood vessel cells, I experienced firsthand the limits imposed by redundant signaling pathways. In the body, histamine is an important chemical signal that initiates the cell's stress response. When histamine is present in the blood that nourishes the arms and legs, the stress signal produces large gaping pores in the walls of the blood vessels. The opening of these holes in the blood vessel's walls is the first step in launching a local inflammation reaction. However, if histamine is added to blood vessels in the brain, the same histamine signal increases the flow of nutrition to the neurons, enhancing their growth and specialized functions. In times of stress, the increased nutrition signaled by histamine enables the brain to ramp up its activity in order to better deal with the perceived impending emergency. This is an example of how the same histamine signal can create two diametrically opposed effects, depending on the site where the signal is released. One of the most ingenious characteristics of the body's sophisticated signaling system is its specificity. If you have a poison ivy rash on your arm, the relentless itching results from the release of histamine, the signal molecule that activates an inflammatory response to the ivy's allergen. Since there is no need to start itching all over your body, the histamine is only released at the site of the rash. Similarly, when a person is confronted with a stressful life experience, the release of histamine within the brain increases blood flow to the nervous tissue, enhancing the neurological processing required for survival. The release of histamine in the brain to deal with stress behaviors is restricted and does not lead to the initiation of inflammation responses in other parts of the body. Like the National Guard, histamine is deployed only where it is needed and for as long as it is needed. But most of our medical industry's drugs have no such specificity. When you take an antihistamine to deal with the itchiness of an allergic rash, the ingested drug is distributed systemically. It affects histamine receptors wherever they are located throughout the whole body. Yes, the antihistamine will curb the blood vessel's inflammatory response, dramatically reducing allergic symptoms. However, when the antihistamine enters the brain, it inadvertently alters neural circulation that then impacts nerve function. That's why people who take over-the-counter antihistamines may experience allergy relief and also the side effect of feeling drowsy. A recent example of tragic adverse reactions to drug therapy is the debilitating and life-threatening side effects associated with synthetic hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. Estrogen's best-known influence is on the function of the female reproductive system. However, more recent studies on the distribution of estrogen receptors in the body reveal that they, and of course their complementary estrogen signal molecules, play an important role in the normal function of blood vessels, the heart, and the brain. Doctors have routinely prescribed synthetic estrogen to alleviate menopausal symptoms associated with the shutting down of a woman's reproductive system. However, pharmaceutical estrogen therapy does not focus the drug's effects on the intended target tissues. The drug also impacts and disturbs the estrogen receptors of the heart, the blood vessels, and the nervous system. Synthetic hormone replacement therapy has been shown to have disturbing side effects that result in cardiovascular disease and neural dysfunction, such as strokes. Adverse drug effects, like those contributing to the HRT controversy, are a primary reason why a leading cause of death is iatrogenic illness, i.e., illness resulting from medical treatment. According to conservative estimates published by the Journal of the American Medical Association, iatrogenic illness is the third leading cause of death in this country. More than 120,000 people die from adverse effects of prescribed medications each year. However, last year, a new study based on the results of a 10-year study of government statistics came up with even more dismal figures. That study concludes that iatrogenic illness is actually the leading cause of death in the United States and that adverse reactions to prescription drugs are responsible for more than 300,000 deaths a year. These are dismaying statistics, especially for a healing profession that is arrogantly dismissed 3,000 years of effective Eastern medicine as unscientific, even though it is based on a deeper understanding of the universe. For thousands of years, long before Western scientists discovered the laws of quantum physics, Asians have honored energy as the principal factor contributing to health and well-being. In Eastern medicine, the body is defined by an elaborate array of energy pathways called meridians. In Chinese physiologic charts of the human body, these energy networks resemble electronic wiring diagrams. Using aids like acupuncture needles, Chinese physicians test their patients' energy circuits in exactly the same manner that electrical engineers troubleshoot a printed circuit board, searching for the electrical pathologies. Physicians, the pharmaceutical patsies. But, as admiring as I am of the ancient wisdom of Eastern medicine, I do not want to bash Western doctors who prescribe massive quantities of drugs that contribute to the health profession's lethality. Medical doctors are caught between an intellectual rock and a corporate hard place. They are pawns in the huge medical industry complex. Their healing abilities are hobbled by an archaic medical education founded in Newtonian matter-only universe. Unfortunately, that philosophy went out of vogue 75 years ago, when physicists officially adopted quantum mechanics and recognized that the universe is actually made out of energy. In their postgraduate years, those same doctors received their continuing education about pharmaceutical products from drug reps, the errand boys of the corporate healthcare industry. Essentially, these non-professionals, whose primary goal is to sell product, provide doctors with information about the efficacy of new drugs. Drug companies freely offer this education so they can persuade doctors to push their products. It is evident that the massive quantities of drugs prescribed in this country violate the Hippocratic oath taken by all doctors to first do no harm. We have been programmed by pharmaceutical corporations to become a nation of prescribed drug-popping junkies with tragic results. We need to step back and incorporate the discoveries of quantum physics into biomedicine so that we can create a new, safer system of medicine that is attuned to the laws of nature. Physics and medicine, a day late and $1 short. The physical sciences have already embraced quantum physics with sensational results. Humanity's wake-up call to the reality of a quantum universe occurred on August 6, 1945. The atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima that day demonstrated the awesome power of applied quantum theory and dramatically ushered into the atomic age. On a more constructive note, quantum physics made possible the electronic miracles that are the foundation of the information age. The application of quantum mechanics was directly responsible for the development of TVs, computers, CAT scans, lasers, rocket ships, and cell phones. But what great and marvelous advances in biomedicine, medical sciences, can we attribute to the quantum revolution? Let's list them in order of their importance. It is a very short list. There haven't been any. Though I stress the need to apply the principle of quantum mechanics in bioscience, I'm not advocating that medicine throw out the valuable lessons they have learned using the principles of Isaac Newton. The newer laws of quantum mechanics do not negate the results of classic physics. The planets are still moving in paths that were predicted by Newton's mathematics. The difference between the two physics is that quantum mechanics more specifically applies to molecular and atomic realms, while Newtonian laws apply to higher levels of organization, such as organ systems, people, or populations of people. The manifestation of a disease such as cancer may show up at a micro level when you can see and feel a tumor. However, the processes that instigated the cancer were initiated by the molecular level within the affected progenitor cells. In fact, most biological dysfunctions except injuries due to physical trauma, start at the level of a cell's molecules and ions. Hence the need for a biology that integrates both quantum and Newtonian mechanics. There have thankfully been some visionary biologists who have advocated this integration. More than 40 years ago, the renowned Nobel Prize-winning physiologist Albert Szent-Györgyi published a book called Introduction to a Submolecule Biology. His text was a noble effort to educate the community of life scientists about the importance of quantum physics in biological systems. Unfortunately, his traditional peers, who considered the book to be the ravings of a once brilliant but now senile old man, merely lamented the loss of their former colleague. Biologists in the main have still not recognized the importance of Szent-Györgyi's book, but research suggests that sooner or later they will have to, because the weight of scientific evidence is toppling the old materialistic paradigm. You recall the movements of protein molecules that are the stuff of life? Scientists have tried to predict those movements using the principles of Newtonian physics to no avail. By now, I bet you can guess why. In 2000, an article by V. Fosfridic and L. Goodman in the Journal of Nature revealed that the laws of quantum physics, not Newtonian laws, control a molecule's life-generating movements. Reviewing this groundbreaking study for Nature, biophysicist F. Weinhold concluded, when will chemistry textbooks begin to serve as aids rather than barriers to this enriched quantum mechanic perspective on how molecular turnstiles work? He further emphasized, what are the forces that control the twisting and folding of molecules into complex shapes? Don't look for the answers in your organic chemistry textbook. Yet, organic chemistry provides the mechanistic foundation for biomedicine, and as Weinhold notes, that branch of science is so far outdated that its textbooks have yet to recognize quantum mechanics. Conventional medical researchers have no understanding of the molecular mechanisms that truly provide for life. Hundreds upon hundreds of other scientific studies over the last 50 years have consistently revealed that invisible forces of the electromagnetic spectrum profoundly impact every facet of biological regulation. These energies include microwaves, radio frequencies, the visible light spectrum, extremely low frequencies, acoustic frequencies, and even a newly recognized form of force known as scalar energy. Specific frequencies that and patterns of electromagnetic radiation regulate DNA, RNA, and protein synthesis. They alter protein shape and function and control gene regulation, cell division, cell differentiation, morphogenesis, or the process by which cells assemble into organs and tissues, hormone secretion, and nerve growth and function. Each one of these cellular activities is a fundamental behavior that contributes to the unfolding of life. Though these research studies have been published in some of the most respected mainstream biomedical journals, their revolutionary findings have not been incorporated into the medical school curriculum. An important study 40 years ago by Oxford University biophysicist C.W.F. McClare calculated and compared the efficiency of information transfer between energy signals and chemical signals in biological systems. His research, Resonance in Bioenergetics, published in the Annals of New York Academy of Science, revealed that energetic signal mechanisms, such as electromagnetic frequencies, are 100 times more efficient in relaying environmental information than physical signals such as hormones, neurotransmitters, and growth factors. It is not surprising that energetic signals are so much more efficient. In physical molecules, the information that can be carried is directly linked to a molecule's available energy. However, the chemical coupling employed to transfer their information is accompanied by a massive loss of energy due to the heat generated in making and breaking chemical bonds. Because the thermochemical coupling wastes most of the molecule's energy, The small amount of energy that remains limits the amount of information that can be carried as the signal. We know that living organisms must receive and interpret environmental signals in order to stay alive. In fact, survival is directly related to the speed and efficiency of signal transfer. The speed of electromagnetic energy signals is 186,000 miles per second, while the speed of diffusible chemical is considerably less than 1 centimeter per second. Energy signals are 100 times more efficient and infinitely faster than physical chemical signals. What kind of signaling would your trillion-celled community prefer? Do the math. Buying the farm. I believe the major reason why energy research has been all but ignored comes down to dollars and cents. The trillion-dollar pharmaceutical industry puts its research money into the search for magic bullets in the form of chemicals because pills mean money. If energy healing could be made into tablet form, drug manufacturers would get interested quickly. Instead, they identified deviations in physiology and behavior that vary from some hypothetical norm as unique disorders or dysfunctions, and then they educate the public about the dangers of these menacing disorders. Of course, the oversimplified symptomologies used in defining the dysfunctions prevalent in drug company advertisements has viewers convinced they are afflicted by the particular malady. Do you worry? Worry is a primary symptom of medical condition called anxiety disorder. Stop your worrying. Tell your doctor you want Addendum, a new passion pink drug. Meanwhile, the media essentially avoids the issue of deaths by medicine by directing our attention to the dangers of illicit drugs. They admonish us that using drugs to escape life's problems is not the way to resolve one's issue. Funny, I was just going to use that exact sentence to describe my concerns about the overuse of legal drugs. Are they dangerous? Ask the people who died last year. Using prescription drugs to silence a body's symptoms enables us to ignore personal involvement we may have with the onset of those symptoms. The overuse of prescription drugs provides a vacation from personal responsibility. Our drug mania reminds me of a job at an auto dealership I held while in graduate school. At 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, an irate woman came into the shop. Her car's service engine light was flashing, even though her car had already been repaired for the same problem several times. At 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, who wants to work on a bulky problem and deal with a furious customer? Everyone was quiet, except for one mechanic who said, "I'll take care of it." He drove the car back into the bay, got behind the dashboard, removed the bulb from the signal light, and threw it away. Then he opened a can of soda and lit a cigarette. After a suitable time, during which the customer thought he was actually fixing the car, the mechanic returned and told the woman her car was ready. Thrilled to see that the warning light had stopped flashing, she happily drove off into the sunset. Though the cause of the problem was still present, the symptom was gone. Similarly, pharmaceutical drugs suppress the body's symptoms, but most never address the cause of the problem. Wait, you say, times have changed. We are now more educated to the dangers of drugs and more open to alternative therapies. It is true that because half of Americans visit complementary health practitioners, traditional doctors can no longer put their heads in the sand and hope other approaches go away. Insurance companies have even started to pay for services they once deemed quackery, and major teaching hospitals allow a limited number of such practitioners inside. But even today, very little scientific rigor has been marshaled to assess the effectiveness of complementary medicine. The National Institute of Health did create an alternative medicine branch, thanks to pressures from the public. But that is only a token gesture to quell activists and consumers who spend lots of money on alternative health care. There are no serious research funds available for studying energy medicine. The rub is that without supportive research, energy-based healing modalities are officially labeled unscientific. Good vibes, bad vibes, and the language of energy. though conventional medicine still has not focused on the role energy plays as information. In biological systems, ironically, it has embraced non-invasive scanning technologies which read such energy fields. Quantum physicists have created energy scanning devices that can analyze the frequencies emitted by specific chemicals. These scanning systems enable scientists to identify the molecular composition of materials and objects. Physicists have adopted these devices to read the energy spectra emitted by our body's tissues and organs. Because energy fields travel easily through the physical body, these modern devices such as CAT scans, MRIs, and position emission tomography or PET scans can detect disease non-invasively. Physicians are able to diagnose internal problems by differentiating the spectral energy character of healthy and diseased tissue in the scanned images. The energy scan illustrated above reveals the presence of breast cancer. The diseased tissue emits its own unique energy signature, which differs from the energy emitted by surrounding healthy cells. The energy signatures that pass through our bodies travel through space as invisible waves that resemble ripples on a pond. If you drop a pebble into a pond, the energy carried in the falling pebble, due to the force of gravity pulling on its masses, is transmitted to the water. The ripples generated by the pebble are actually energy waves passing through the water. If more than one pebble is thrown into the water at the same time, the spreading ripples or energy waves from each source can interfere with each other, forming composite waves where two or more ripples converge. That interference can be either constructive, or energy amplifying, or destructive, energy deflating. Here are the pictures of the MRI, of the mammogram. I'll read the description. Mammogram. Note the above illustration is not a photograph of a breast. It is an electronic image created from scanning the radiant energy characteristics of the organ cells and tissues. Differentials in the energy spectra enable radiologists to distinguish between healthy and diseased tissue. The black spot in the center is the diseased tissue. Dropping two pebbles of the same size from the same height at exactly the same time coordinates the wave action of the ripples. The ripples from each pebble converge on each other. Where the ripples overlap, the combined power of the interacting waves is doubled, a phenomena referred to as constructive interference or harmonic resonance. When the dropping of the pebbles is not coordinated, their energy waves are out of sync. As one wave is going up, the other is going down. At the point of convergence, these out-of-sync energy waves cancel each other, instead of a doubling of the energy where the ripples interfere with each other. The water is calm. There is no energy wave. This phenomenon of canceling energy waves is called destructive interference. Here's a picture of the pebble in the water. The behavior of energy waves is important for biomedicine because vibrational frequencies can alter the physical and chemical properties of an atom as surely as physical signals like histamine and estrogen. Because atoms are in constant motion, which you can measure by their vibration, they create wave patterns similar to the expanding ripples from the thrown pebbles we talked about above. Each atom is unique because the distribution of its negative and positive charges, coupled with its spin rate, generates a specific vibration or frequency pattern. Here's another picture of the waves that are constructive or make things bigger, or destructive. So this one is constructive, where it takes the two waves, they are matching, and so then it creates this one, which is a doubling effect of those waves. And this one is the opposite, where they are opposite waveforms. So here's the two forms. They're opposite of one another, and therefore the resulting is that they cancel each other out. Scientists have devised a way to stop an atom dead in its tracks by exploiting its energy waves. They first identify the frequency of a specific atom and then tune a laser to emit the same frequency. Though the atom and the photoelectric frequency emit the same wave pattern, the laser's waves are designed to be out of sync with those atoms. When the light wave interacts with the atom's wave, the resulting destructive interference cancels the atom's vibration and it stops spinning. When you want to enhance rather than stop atoms, you find vibrations that create harmonic resonance. Those vibrations can be of electromagnetic or acoustic origin. When, for example, a skilled vocalist like Ella Fitzgerald maintains a note that is harmonically resonant with the atoms of a crystal goblet, the goblet's atoms absorb her sound waves. Through the mechanics of constructive interference, the added energy of resonant sound waves causes the goblets of atoms to vibrate faster. Eventually, the atoms absorb so much energy that they vibrate fast enough to break free from the bonds that hold them together. When that happens, the goblet actually explodes. Doctors use constructive interference mechanics to treat kidney stones, a rare case where the laws of quantum physics have been harnessed as a therapeutic tool in modern medicine. Kidney stones are crystals whose atoms vibrate at a specific frequency. Doctors non-invasively focus a harmonic frequency on the kidney stone. Constructive interference results when the focused energy waves interact with the atoms in the kidney stones. Like the atoms in the crystal goblet example above, the atoms of the kidney stones vibrate so quickly that the stones explode and dissolve. The small remaining fragments can then be easily passed from the system without the excruciating pain that accompanies large unexploded stones. The science of physics implies that the same harmonic resonance mechanism by which sound waves destroyed a goblet or a kidney stone can enable similar energy harmonics to influence the functions of our body's chemistry. But biologists have not explored these mechanisms with the passion with which they pursue new drugs. That is unfortunate because there is enough scientific evidence to suspect that we can tailor a waveform that is therapeutic as a therapeutic agent in much the same way we now modulate chemical structures with drugs. There was a time in medicine when electrotherapy was used extensively. At the end of the 19th century, the development of batteries and other devices that produce electromagnetic fields led to hastily constructed machines that were supposed to cure disease. The public sought out practitioners of this newfangled healing art called radioesthesia. Word spread that these devices were very effective. In fact, they became so popular that magazines were likely to tout ads that read something like, "Be a radioesthesist. Only $9.99, includes instructions." By 1894, over 10,000 U.S. physicians, as well as an untold number of self-trained home consumers, were regularly using electrotherapy. In 1895, D.D. Palmer created a science of chiropractic. Palmer recognized that the flow of energy through the nervous system is critical to health. He focused on the mechanics of the vertebral column, the conduit through which spinal nerves provide information to the body. He developed skills to assess and tune the flow of information by adjusting the backbone's tensions and pressures. The medical profession became threatened by Palmer's chiropractors, as well as homeopathic healers, radioestheticists, and other drugless practitioners who are taking away much of their business. The Carnegie Foundation published the Flexner Report in 1910 that called for all medical practices to be based on proven science. Because physicists had not yet discovered the quantum universe, energy medicine was incomprehensible to science. Denounced by the American Medical Association, chiropractic and other energy-based modalities fell to disrepute. Radioestheticists disappeared completely. In the last 40 years, chiropractic has made great inroads in the healing arts. In 1990, chiropractors won a lengthy court battle against the medical monopoly when the AMA was found guilty of illegal attempts to destroy the profession. Since then, chiropractic has spread its sphere of influence. It is even accepted in some hospitals. And despite electrotherapy's checkered past, neuroscientists are conducting exciting new research in the area of vibrational energy therapies. The brain has long been recognized to be an electrical organ, which is why electroshock therapy has historically been used to treat depression. But scientists are now working on less invasive tools to treat the electric brain. A recent article in Science touted the beneficial effects of transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, which stimulates the brain with magnetic fields. TMS is an updated version of the same 19th century radioesthesia healing techniques that were once denounced by conventional medicine. New studies suggest that TMS can be a powerful therapeutic tool. If used properly, it can ease depression and alter cognition. It is clear that we need interdisciplinary research in this promising and understudied area. Research that encompasses quantum physics, electrical engineering, chemistry, as well as biology. Such research will be particularly welcomed because it is likely to result in therapies of far fewer side effects than drugs. But the research will only confirm what scientists and non-scientists already know, but may not realize they know. All organisms, including humans, communicate and read their environment by evaluating energy fields. Because humans are so dependent on spoken and written language, we have neglected our energy sensing communication systems. As with any biological function, a lack of use leads to atrophy. Increasingly, Aborigines still utilize this hypersensory capacity in their daily lives. For them, there has been no sensory atrophy. For example, Australian Aborigines can sense water buried deep beneath the sand. The Amazonian shamans communicate with the energies of their medicinal plants. You no doubt on occasion get a glimmer of your ancient sensing mechanism. Have you ever walked down a dark street at night, and instantly felt drained of energy? What were you experiencing? Destructive interference, just like out-of-sync pebbles thrown into a pond, or a popular jargon, bad vibes. Remember unexpectedly meeting that special someone in your life and becoming so energized you felt high? You were experiencing constructive interference, good vibes. When I gave up my view that we were inert matter, I realized not only that the science of my chosen career was out of date, but also that I needed to promote more constructive interference in my own life. I needed a personal quantum physics-inspired tune-up. Rather than focusing on creating harmonic energies in my life, I was going through life willy-nilly, mindlessly expending energy. That is the equivalent of heating a house in the dead of winter while leaving the doors and windows open. I started closing those doors and windows by carefully examining where I was wasting my energy. It was easy for me to close some of them. For example, it was easy to get rid of energy-draining activities like those deadly faculty parties. It was much harder to get rid of the energy-draining defeatist thinking in which I habitually engaged. Thoughts consumed energy as surely as does marathon running, as we'll see in the next chapter. I needed a quantum tune-up, and so I've made clear does biomedicine. But as I said earlier, we are already in the midst of a very slow shift in medicine, propelled by consumers who are seeking out complementary medicine practitioners in record numbers. It's been a long time coming, but the quantum biological revolution is nigh. The medical establishment will eventually be dragged, half kicking and screaming, full force into the quantum revolution.